Welcome to The Wanderer's Compass, a Big Blend radio travel podcast featuring Joelle and Ryan Slough. All right, everyone. So we are talking about Edinburgh today. Edinburgh Castle, apparently a little, Scotch whiskies involved, maybe a high tea or so. Some interesting characters that you may learn about when you step into the glorious and massive Edinburgh Castle. And so let's start off with you, Ryan, because Ryan, I think you were the first one there, or were you whiskey tasting before the castle? Like, which came first, the whiskey or the castle? I just need to clarify.
The first time was the castle. The second time was the whiskey.
Okay, so Joelle, you were the other way around, right? Whiskey, then castle?
No. Actually, the first time we just did the castle, but we had walked by this whiskey place right as we entered the castle. And so Ryan goes, boy, I really want to take that, the class. He heard about a class there. And so the next time we went to Edinburgh, he, said, I want to take the class. And it turns out it's only offered one day a month. And it literally, by coincidence, because we already booked our flight, it was a day that we were going to be there. So he went to the whiskey class all day. I went to the castle the day without him, but I did decide to try the whiskey experience tour and did the whole tour, and then probably tasted about 8 to 10 Scotch whiskeys after. So I definitely had some whiskey in me when I entered the castle after that. So I'm the one who actually toured the castle with some whiskey in me.
Well, you go, girl. This is fun.
Got sophisticated.
Yeah, well, he got educated.
Now, did you get like a whiskey certificate after like how many? This was like a full day class.
Yeah. It was like an 8-hour day. You started off with coffee and tea and like some biscuits and such there, and they just kind of introduce yourselves, and then you move on to basically they give you a rundown of history and like how it's made and different qualities, and then you do fragrance samples and kind of learn palettes and all this and that, and then you go to lunch, and then you get a nice lunch there at the building, and then you go back again and finish up the class, and then you get to drink a little bit, to try a little bit of stuff, and then you actually get a mini bottle. And you get to mix your own. So they have like four different kinds of Scotch. And depending on the region was the notes of it. So you got to decide how much you wanted out of like the however many little, milliliters the bottle was, that how much, if you wanted like, oh, I'm going to put 5% of this one, 10% of this one, and kind of do your own blend. And you get like a little souvenir, a nice certificate, and little booklet of like the maps of the regions and all that stuff. So you get a lot. It was a lot to it, and then at the end you take your test, and if you passed, you get the certificate or whatever. And it was pretty fun. It was a nice experience, and hopefully I could find other things like that at other places, whether it's a wine thing or maybe that's an Irish whiskey place. I can go next time I'm in Ireland or something. So. It was definitely a nice experience, and I would like to go back.
Well, I think it's cool because the Scotch whiskey is really fascinating about the different regions, and we've done a lot with Scottish culture in publishing. Actually, in San Diego, they had the San Diego Scottish Highland Games, and we did their guide for years, and we had to learn all these different things. I mean, it was fantastic. Of course, we lived in England, visited Scotland, went to the Edinburgh Castle when I was a little girl, but I didn't get to taste whiskey at that point. But I remember going to the distilleries, and they had that big thing of like mash, and man, as a little kid, I thought that stuff was stinky, man. There was like a stinky. But then as I grew up, I started learning that the stinky is good.
Yeah.
We want the stinky. So Joelle, did you get a certificate for having 8 shots of whiskey?
No. They were so cool because I sat right at the bar within this. The place is called the Scotch Whisky Experience. There's several different ones in Edinburgh, but this one was the one that was most highly rated, and it's literally at the entrance to the castle. No, but I really learned a lot because I was, when you're by yourself, sometimes the advantage is that the bartender was a lot more engaging, and I trust you. Show me what you have. And he got so excited, and he was pouring me all this super cool. I didn't even ask the price. It wasn't much in the end, so I just trusted him to make good choices, and it was really a blast because again, these years I've been like, I'm not sure why people like this. And I truly
Is
did
it the
enjoy
stinky? You don't like the stinky? Well, it's funny because that really is, the smell is part of our taste,
It
right? It's part
is.
of our taste buds. So, when something smells like different, it's like wine. Some wine smells like diesel, and leather and things you wouldn't think that you would be tasting and smelling, but you do. And I like it. I do.
Pinot Noirs in Oregon. The Pinot Noirs in Oregon, when I actually toured the wineries down there years ago with friends, smells either like dirt or like
Yeah.
barnyard. It's strong, but it's delicious. There's no taste of that, but the smell is not what you expect, and you're like, oh, is this going to be bad? But no, it's very good. So yeah, the smell is a very important element of it, but we should also not use that as to turn it off because there's also there's more that more complex than just the smell.
Yeah, and what I was talking about with the stinky is really when it was becoming that mash part, right? And so it's at a different stage. But I love that we're talking about Edinburgh Castle and we get to start off with Scotch whiskey because, I think about it, way back when with this this castle's got to be one of the most visited in the world, Edinburgh Castle. It's just such a is it like
it's way up there because you can't miss it. You show up in this amazing city of Edinburgh that's just like you feel like you've literally you've been pulled through this time capsule because there's something about that city that is remarkable. I once heard someone we actually posted a photo and someone said, I don't like it. All the buildings look dirty. And I was like, well, that's sort of the charm of it all because you are literally stepping back in time. They don't clean them on purpose because it's that whole feel. It's like you're stepping into this Harry Potter movie and it's living, it's real. And there's some intimacy in this city as well as just being so grand. But above it all is this castle that's sitting several hundred feet above sea level. And it sits on top of a volcanic plug, which initially, I think when we first wrote this, we said something a hill, and people were like, no, it's not a hill. It's a volcanic plug. And that was formed 350 million years ago. So this has been there a long time. And I think that's what makes this castle stand out. You're in this beautiful, real city, a real city. It's not, a town. It's a city. And above it all is this castle watching over all of it, keeping watch over the city. And a lot of major events, a lot of major things happen there that carries through this extremely long length of time, and a lot of drama and a lot of bad stuff as well. And the castle, when you visit it, really does portray its story very well. And there's so many different things to do there. So I think what makes Edinburgh Castle different than others is you usually go to the castle, you see the castle, you leave. But this has many different elements. It has historical elements. It has, the crown jewels are there. You've got displays of what it was like during the time when it was used as a prison camp. It's more than just a castle. It's a whole story. It's like this village you're walking through with all these elements and churches. And, it's really special. And I think that's what makes it unique to other castles. And then you've got the famous military tattoo that happens in August every year that draws people from all over the world. We have never been there for that. I hear it's crazy busy, but there's so many different aspects of this castle, and you can have high tea, and there's a beautiful cafe with the views. So it has something for everybody, and it seemed very popular with children. And you've got bagpipes playing and times. The first time especially we saw a whole presentation, and then the 1:00 gun gets shot off every day at 1:00, or the cannon. There's a lot happening, and it's more than just your typical castle, which I think what makes it so special.
And I was going to say, because it's also all these different eras of this castle, right, Ryan? There's not just, hey, we built this castle, and then here comes someone who has the castle, then there's the next person and the next person, right, that's running the castle, or the king or the queen of it, right? So when you first put this article together, you have this cast of characters. So there's all these stories about the people, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of history, and I think one of the biggest things about the castle is that it's still occupied. It's still a working military there, but it's kind of like this mini community above the city because you have the shops, you have the military there, you have a bunch of things, and little like the high tea they said, and other things to do there. And you have Mary Queen of Scots, and oh man, I can't even think of all the names. I have to look at a list. It's like
I'll just tell everybody that you have, an incredible article on your website that has its own table of contents because you all did a lot and did a lot of digging into histories. The link is in the episode notes. But even if you just go under the Castle Hunters or go into the regions on the blog, if you just go to wandererscompass.com, you'll find it. But you have a list of these cast of characters. So there's a lot of people, and you don't want to mess with those queens, right?
And there were quite a few queens in there. St. Margaret was the first. She was there starting in 1045. This has been around a long time. This castle has definitely been in a long history. King James was there, Mary of Guise, Mary, of course, Queen of Scots, as Ryan mentioned. The child king, James, was actually, was born there. His mother was Mary, Queen of Scots. So there's a very illustrious history of some names that we all know, even just from our history lessons when we were young, that we, that's like, oh yeah, I recognize that. And then of course there's drama around these, like the Mary Queen of Scots has an enormous story behind her. And so that definitely intrigues a lot of people because there's stories of murders and being,
I mean,
it has to be. There's a lot of stuff that happened at this.
Wow. So for you, Ryan, I know you love military history. I mean, what was this when you look at how it was built up there? Again, it's like they have the bird's eye view if anyone wants to attack, right? So did you learn any of that history while you were there about how it was built and why?
I mean, well, it was built there obviously for the strategic location and to guard the city. Over the years, I mean, it's switched hands back and forth. I think it's gone through I think 26 or so sieges. So it's a very important position. It's not just. It's kind of like the symbol, it's who owns that is, so with all the between the England and Scotland and then, the Jacobite uprisings and all these different people through history going back and forth, they always went back to this place to take it because, not only, like I said, for the strategic location, but for just a symbol of what it was. And, like I mean, they have the Mons Meg there. That it's a gigantic 1,300 or 13,000 pound cannon there, which would be pretty awesome to see fired one day. But I don't think they can do that. But
wow, that would be I don't even think earbuds are going to help you with that.
Blow out your eardrums if you're not careful.
No, I have filmed Civil War reenactments with cannons, and I don't care. Like, no. And I keep telling myself, don't jump. I jump. And I didn't think I could jump. Big Blend radio hosts can jump. I'm just saying. So, I mean, could you imagine if that could really go off? I mean, that's a biggie. Look at that. And everyone just go on the website again. I mean, on that article, like the Mons, you're talking about the Mons, that's 330-pound shots, right? Are we talking about the same one? Because you've got another one, the 1 o'clock gun.
The 1 o'clock gun is the one they shoot off every day at 1 o'clock. That one's that's not the Mons Meg is. I mean, we're talking something
massive.
We're talking the 300-pound shots, and the actual cannon weighs 13,000 pounds. And this was from 1457, and it's still sitting there, and it's in impeccable shape because they've done a beautiful job restoring it. But it would take horses to move this thing, and it would. What did they say that it had a pace that took 9 miles? They could do 9 miles in one day. That's how big this was.
Yeah, there's a reason why it was never actually used in war. It's kind of like the what was that that one gun, I can't think of it, that Hitler built. It was like one of these just ridiculous like rail guns, but it could only be moved by train, and it was kind of just like impractical. But it was kind of like one of those status things where it was like, here's a good idea.
I was going to say it's a show off. It's like, my gun's bigger than yours.
And then they're like, this wasn't the smartest idea, but
But that is, I mean, it looks like a big noodle in a way. It really does. It's like, no, it's wild. So, so you've got these guns. You've got, the gun, the 1 o'clock gun, but that's a big gun too. Like, I would have thought, like, just looking at it without knowing, like, it's a 1 o'clock gun, the 1 o'clock gun, that it would be a cannon to me. So, Ryan, would a cannon, I know it's all armor, right? I always thought a tank was a tank, like a vehicle. I didn't realize a tank was like armor, same thing as like an F-14 was considered armor, right? So the 1 o'clock gun, to me, that's not a gun. That looks like a cannon. I mean, is there a real difference? Is it just because one's on wheels, one's not? Like, what's the difference between a gun and a cannon?
Well, the cannon was more just a a shot of smooth bore, just either a solid round, or they did have explosive shells, depending on the era. But a gun, the gun is usually rifled, and depending on what it is, it's more distance, more accuracy. But I forget what that 1 o'clock one is. I think was it a
Actually, one, so it actually was way
Wow.
older than that.
Yeah, but
Wow.
not so. Well, I don't think that particular gun is that old. But yeah, so they've been
No,
doing.
it is. It's
Oh,
1861.
yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, I got.
But I think it's like when it's on wheels, that's the other thing. I mean, even when they used to take cannons in battle, like it's like, how did you do that? Carry them through and like didn't they had like horses and people and like and then having to move them again, like shoot it and then move them again. Like that's just insane. Like
Mhm.
it's you know what I mean? That's just
Yep.
hard labor, especially when I don't know, when you're in the middle of war to have that kind of labor go into cannons and big guns like that. It's like, I got big guns and I cannot lie. It's a little massive, but getting them up there, I mean, even the architecture of it and restoring it, but not leave, that's another balance too. And you, in your guide here, because this is like a full guide, everyone, there's so much to cover. It's a little insane you've got to read this. And I would really encourage you to read this before planning to go. But you talk a little bit about the people that come later to restore this and different architects that came in and did, and there was a guy called Willie Nelson who helped fund it. I'm just sorry, but that's funny. But I mean, to really keep this castle going, there's a lot of that's a lot of funding to keep something like that going, to keep it restored. And I mean, when it was first built, there wasn't electricity. Just think of how it has had to change over the years.
And it's so beautiful when you're up there. There's something about it, especially when you go into the part where the apartments are and so forth. It's gorgeous. There's so much to see. They really have captured the history when you go through that to see. It was quite elegant in there. Of course, it is a castle, but at the same time, it was an active military garrison. So we have these royalty living here for quite a while. Now they left at some point, and it was really just a military garrison for a long time. The castle part where all the royalty lived was more in the earlier days. It really became a military garrison in the 1600s. But you've got the royal palace, and the apartments are gorgeous. You've got the Great Hall, which is absolutely stunning, and you've also got the Scottish War Memorial, which obviously pays tribute to the people who have lost their lives in Scottish battles. So there's just a lot of things. I think what most profound thing, and then when I went back the second time, I really spent more time in here because I remember it impacted me. At one point, this was being used as a prison, and they held prisoners of wars there. And the conditions obviously were not ideal, but they have a whole display of what it's like. It's very realistic. They have mannequins, obviously the full, human size, and the conditions these prisoners were held in captured all elements from the royal end of what happened at this castle, and then also in the days where it was a military garrison, when it was a prison. So you really do get this broad history because it obviously has been around for over 1,000 years. And I think where they're really trying to work hard to capture all of that. And so I think what makes it fascinating, because it's such a diverse experience. You're not just looking at these pretty rooms moving on, but you also have the prison, you have these other aspects. And of course, you have the infamous crown jewels, which is what draws a lot of people there. And that is always a long line. The second time I went, I didn't even go for it because the line was too long. Everything else was pretty moderate, but boy, those crown jewels, it's a big deal. And they're pretty and they're gorgeous, and we saw them the first time, but once is enough for me, but definitely worth doing it. But you may want to keep an eye. I mean, they say based on the time of day, go as fast because that's the longest line, the hardest thing to predict.
Wow. I remember seeing, like, as a kid, seeing the crown jewels and going, man, this stuff is real, right?
Yeah.
And at the same time, realizing I was seeing like emeralds. I don't know why that stuck in my head, but emeralds for the first time. Like they were big emeralds. And I was just like, this is like for real. As a little girl, I'm going, where's mine?
Exactly. And they're the oldest jewels in all of Britain. So these definitely have meaning. They're unique. And I remember the emeralds. That's what stands out to me. There were quite a few jewels in there, but I remember the emeralds.
Was that
Gold,
wild? Because
silver.
it's still with me.
Yeah.
I was little, and I was just like, wow. And I remember it being so big and that's something to think of. If you're taking kids, like be prepared, right? So I don't know how that is as a parent. I just remember it being really, really big to me as a little girl. But I think you probably have to be prepared with your kids for a big day out because
Oh yeah.
yeah, it's a long day, right? But they have food and stuff like that there, right? There's that
We
cafe
each
with
time
the
we went,
view.
we stopped, or I stopped at the cafe when I was on my own, and then we both went to the cafe because you do. It's a lot of walking. I mean, the place isn't huge in the perspective that you're going to be exhausted walking, but there's lines to stand in. There's different things to walk around, and especially after doing the crown jewels. And the crown jewel, I don't know if you'll know the story, is the crown jewels actually were made in Italy and was a gift from the Pope to
Wow.
King James, and then later was actually the first time they were used along with the and the sword, which are beautiful as well, were to coronate Mary Queen of Scots in 1543. So you have that, again, these jewels have been around a very long time. And the scepter, I remember thinking that, I don't know if you remember seeing the scepter, Lisa, but that was really cool. And of course, Ryan liked the sword. But it's dramatic. And of course, they're very protected. I don't believe you're allowed to take pictures in there because
Unfortunately, no.
no, they keep that pretty tight, but it's probably they don't want to hold up the people because everyone's stopping to take photos.
Very
But
small.
yeah, but it's actually was stunning, and it was last used in the coronation of Queen Elizabeth. So it continues to have a role in also our current times.
Well, and the swords. Now, okay, so Ryan, tell us about that because the swords, I mean, we stopped using swords at one point, right? But then don't other like I mean, I'm thinking samurais. I know there's fencing and everything, but do we use swords at all in any kind of defense anywhere in the world today, do you think?
No, but no, we still because they're kind of a tradition things. In our military, obviously, with the Marines, they have their sword, or I think the saber. Don't
That's
want to
right.
get wrong.
Uh-oh.
And then we have
Marines versus Army. Here it
and
goes.
then we have ours for our dress uniforms. We have depending on if you're officer or an NCO or enlisted, you can get a enlisted sword or a saber, and it's more for your dress blues and traditional ceremonies. And we actually still use them today. For instance, when we do a change command ceremonies, we've done that to where I've had to go to a few where ahead of the formation and like we get a new first sergeant or somebody or a sergeant major. We'll come in and do our little, back and forth and hand the sword over, kind of relinquishing the command, and then it goes around to the next person and symbolizing that they trust you with the command, and then it goes back to you, kind of thing. So it's a lot of tradition with those things that we still keep today. Fortunately, no swords. I don't think that would
Well, what's
work
it
out too
like
well.
going from seeing those kind of swords and handling them to seeing a sword in Edinburgh Castle? I mean, because that was a big deal, right? I mean, I still go back to Merlin and King Arthur and the sword. Sorry, I'm am in that mode. Well, come on, like don't when you go to Edinburgh Castle, don't you kind of go back in that mindset of like what it was like, with in those times, I don't
Yeah,
know. There's something mystical about King Arthur and I think King Arthur needs to come back as a superhero and take care of the world right now. I do.
Marvel
I think
Adam
that's actually a
series.
great suggestion.
Yeah, Marvel should do. Yeah, but I mean, seeing the swords, I mean, wasn't that such a big deal then? Like, if you had the sword, there was like a power to it. I mean, I think about like Boudica, right? And she was like, and don't mess with her. And everybody, Boudica, but everybody has a different way of saying it. And I got to be careful what I say because that almost came out with some other word. But I didn't really, but there was like a power to her swords, and it was her kids there was like that story of her where her kids were slaughtered as well as her husband, right? And she was queen, and they were, I mean, she fought the Romans, right? And so her kids in her mind were telling her how to do battle, and she stood up with her enemies against the Romans who were true enemies. And at that time, I mean, they would just slice people's heads off and put them on a stake. I mean, it's kind of brutal, but the sword, there was like almost like mind over matter. There was like a spiritual connection to their sword. And I don't know if I've just watched too many movies, but that's what it seems like to me. Like the power of the sword was a big deal. So when you see something like that, Ryan, does that ever, I mean, am I just Hollywooding things or what? Or
Yeah, a little bit.
come on now.
Yeah, but yeah, they have a nice armory there, and shows you all the different things throughout the years. But yeah, this I mean, like I said, back in the day, that was the main source of fighting, or main weapon. But then as things evolved, I would say they started getting phased out, and that's why just officers would get it because then it became more of like a status symbol of like,
Okay.
hey, this person's in charge, because I mean, you see it, we had all the way up to the Civil War and and beyond. They had that as a symbol until eventually we just stopped carrying that.
Mm.
And just only use it for ceremonial purposes. Yeah, I mean, it's an important part of history, and it's not just. I mean, I always love going to those places and seeing, all the armor and the swords and whatnot, and just kind of thinking of what it would be like to have that and wear it and walk around the game
Office
now.
and
But well, the armor is actually surprisingly not as bad as you think because it's balanced throughout your body, and
okay.
versus like today with our body armor, we're wearing, I don't know, 60 some pounds or,
What?
plus
Really?
just on your chest, and versus when you had suit of armor, it was, a couple pounds here and a couple pounds there and, spread out through your whole body. So it's, it was maybe cumbersome, but it wasn't as heavy as you would think. And today
I didn't know that either.
ours are a little awkward because we're carrying so much and it's all just focused on your torso. So, you're kind of top heavy and, we're still pushing to lighten the load. Actually, the Army just came out with an initiative to try and push it down to a basic load of how much weight to lower it because they realizing that, people are too held down and weighed down and cumbersome in battle on the battlefield.
Wow.
When, they go out there and do their thing like infantry. They can't be like, oh, let me just run with 100 and some pounds of weight on them because you're gonna blow out a knee. Or, you're not gonna dodge bullets very well.
Well, are you wearing bulletproof vests when is part of that? I mean, are they like I always think that with, even policemen and stuff, like how protected are they in regards to that? Because, people still get shot and die, like in, obviously, but
yeah, we have the soft body armor and then with ceramic composite plates that go in that slide in the front and depending on your job and what you're doing, I mean you have like these arm daps that protect you from shrapnel and groin protectors and all these other things and they're continually to get newer ones and stuff. So unfortunately I won't be around for that because I'll be retiring in about 3.5 years.
But I mean, but this is fascinating, but this is the thing is to, I've got to send you an interview we did with Nick Collier, who served in the military. And then also he's an amazing photographer and artist, multifaceted and multimedia. And he was an artist in residence in Gettysburg National Military Park and not far from you, right? And he recreated the armor and then did something different to it. Anyway, he recreated the battle scene of the soldiers lying in the field and he recreated like Pickett's charge and put himself in there in his own photos. Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Wow.
I should send you that. But he did this one armor thing and then you have to see it, like he made his own armor and it's all metal. And then he has like a fin on the back, like if you were a fish, like a fin. And anyway, it's fascinating what he did. But it's interesting because he, was looking at what was going on in the past to now, and he was putting himself as a soldier into what happened with the soldiers in the Civil War and in Gettysburg. That was it. Yeah, and he did this armor thing, but then he also did it in his actual combat, or his uniform that he still had. So put himself in today's uniform in that to kind of show like we're still fighting, and I'll send you that link. It's really fascinating what
great.
yeah, I mean, because that's I know we're talking about whiskey tasting and, all of this good stuff that you're going to see in a castle, and jewels and everything. But the armor, when it comes down to it, I think it's fascinating because when we go in the past, that's how we can reevaluate the present, right? And see how we've evolved and how And then it goes to how we evolved as human beings. I think this is that thing as we look at castles, because we all know who built castles. They were really poor people. They were the peasants, really, that built those castles and didn't have, trucks to take the stone and the
That
flint.
has to, especially when you look how high this castle is and you're going,
Yeah, it's pretty
again,
crazy.
that's a constant thing for us. It's like, how did they do this without modern technology? And especially in some places, you look at the stones and they're perfectly, there's no light coming through. Everything is perfectly fit. And this is, 1,000 years old. It is remarkable. And the technology they had, and it seems we had lost it for a while and it started coming back. But Edinburgh Castle is an example of just this. And it stood the test of time. It's still there. It's a major draw and it's beautiful to be. And the views, oh my God, we haven't really talked about the views, but even if all you go in there is to go look at the views, it's worth it because you are literally over all of Edinburgh. And from every place you go, it's stunning. So that alone is worth it. And each time we were there, especially the second time, the views were stunning, beautiful skies. I was really happy because I got a lot better photos the second time because it did get cloudy because it is Scotland. It is Edinburgh. It rains a lot and it's cloudy a lot, but I was really lucked out the second time. And when we walked around later in the day, we got some good shots from below because the skies had cleared and it was really beautiful. So it is it's such an amazing city and there's so much to do. Two things I want to make sure we bring up too is I would say plan a minimum of 2 hours there. You could easily spend 4 or more, especially if you try to get, schedule a high tea, or if it's a busy time of year, you can definitely spend 4 to 6 hours there. I did it about 3 hours the second time, and I think we spent about 2 hours there, if I correct Ryan, the first time. The one thing you absolutely need to do, because we're getting you excited about this fun and beautiful castle, but if you don't have a ticket that you purchased ahead of time, you're probably not going to get in, especially during peak times of the year. When I was there the last time when Ryan was taking the Scotch whiskey class, when I walked up, there were signs all over, no tickets available today, no tickets available today, which again, I was aware of that. So I had bought my ticket online, but there was no doubt they even told me, don't even ask. There's just no tickets available.
And we were on the off season.
We were in the off season. Yes.
Okay. Well, let's go to that. Let's talk about when is the high season. When is the off season?
It's because Scotland is a good place to go in the summer because it is cooler. It's not as hot as other parts of Europe and other parts of the world. That summer is their biggest time. And then the famous military tattoo, the big event that happens there, is in August. And we've never been there during those months. We hear it can get crazy, but they do, like, as I mentioned, really do limit who can get in there. So, or how many people can get in there. So I think it's not going to be ever horrible because the day I was there, it was full and I felt everything was manageable. The line for the crown jewels looked about 20 minutes to half an hour, but nothing else I went into had a line.
That's where you should take your whiskey tasting. They should set it up right outside.
I was wondering, they do have, I didn't look if the restaurant has whiskey. I bet they do. They serve champagne with the high tea, so I would bet at some place in there we could get whiskey. But there's a lot of, again, you'll see bagpipes, you'll see things like that going on. And kids, there's a lot of kids there because there's open lawn too. And there's so many little interactive things to do. And there's a pet cemetery off to the side, right actually where the view is actually one of the best, is a pet cemetery. So there's just all sorts of interesting little fun features of this that you're not expecting. And then again, as you're above, you can see things like the famous Scott Memorial that is is incredible. And then you've got the galleries and the park. If anyone's there, definitely spend time at the Prince Street Gardens. They are stunning. And you could just spend hours just wandering. And that's what I think's so cool even about the castle or in Edinburgh is you could just wander for hours and just absorb it all.
Look, the streets, like in cobblestone too. I don't know if you got to see cobblestone. I mean, all of that. I know it's just so. Oh, we take that away here. I mean,
we do.
There's a town we go to in Louisiana, in Kiddish, Louisiana. It's the oldest settlement, and they have brick streets there, and they wanted to pull up the brick streets, and so a bunch of women. It's like happened maybe 70 years ago. Women got all the women in the city. And this is the oldest settlement in the state and the oldest in the Louisiana Purchase, I believe. They have the oldest cemetery because they didn't move theirs and New Orleans did. No. Anyway, all these women went and like held hands and sat on the bricks so they couldn't do anything. And they
Oh.
saved the brick street. And that's kind of when we take, and Texas has some brick streets. I remember going to Lubbock from Colorado, and there was a town called Happy, and there's a Happy Bank. And I thought, that's so smart. That's a happy bank. You want to put your money in a happy bank, but just don't run off with it. But anyway, there's like bricks. There was a brick streets in this tiny, tiny little town. And I was like, oh my gosh, I hope they save them. And I'm seeing them in Gladewater, Texas. But that's as close as we get in this country with cobblestone. But cobblestone streets, you have to know how to walk on them too. Just saying.
You have to have the right shoes for sure.
Yeah, wear good shoes when you go to Europe and England and Scotland and Wales. Wear good shoes. But I feel like we lose our history when we dig up roads like that. We should at least keep like a main street or like something or that, but that. But I do want to ask you, Ryan, going back to the military side, when you guys were in Edinburgh, either at the castle or around there and in Scotland in general, were there any like kind of displays that showed the history of the actual soldiers, which is so fascinating to me, on like caber tossing and how like the Scottish dancers were really like the dances, like the hornpipe, and they have the sword dance where they would actually dance over swords, and it wasn't and now you see a lot of girls doing it, but it was actually these tactical, like it was like boot camp for the soldiers, like carrying the caber, putting the caber over the moat, and you'd have to be able to run across the caber to get over the moat. So that was a huge part of, and like shot put, all of the, when you go to a Scottish Highland Games, anywhere in this country, anywhere you go, all of that was part of, like, you don't want to mess with a Scot that's going to get you. You don't. Like, they're burly boys and they'll come at you. I'm just saying, so much on the Scottish culture of these dances were for the soldiers so they would be quick on their feet, which is fascinating. So did you see any of that when you were there? I don't know, because I don't remember that personally when we were there. Again, I was little.
Unfortunately, no, we've not, like the events they have in like August. I said we haven't been able to attend that. One of these days, maybe we'll have to go. I mean, they do the changing of the guard every day, and you'll see them wearing bagpipe or playing the bagpipes and traditional things like that. And in the museum, I mean, they have a whole history of all their uniforms and throughout and gear and throughout kind of the history of Scotland and everything and the castles. So it's pretty nice that they have all that. We haven't gone to other places and have seen things like that. Where was the one? I think it was we were doing, was it 2 years ago? We did Hadrian's Wall.
Oh yeah.
We drove from west to east, and then we ended up in what was that, Newcastle?
Yeah, Newcastle, I believe.
And there's a town near there, or like right at the end we went to, and there was this old fort, there's like World War II stuff there. There's old elements and whatever, and they're having a whole World War II boot camp thing. And then there's like these kids, these guys are dressed up. They have like the tents there and, some of the old equipment and whatever. And they're lining up these kids and doing like drill sergeant type stuff and like telling them how, like, to do things with the rifles and like all this stuff. It was pretty cool. I wish I could do more research and find places that do that throughout, different parts of history and like what times of years that they do, because it'd be a cool, fun thing to do. Yeah. And we hopefully when I'm in Ireland here soon with my boy, he'll be able to find some things like that.
Cool. Well, I think this is it's so interesting, like, because that's what history comes alive when you step into it. Like, you took classes on whiskey tasting. I think every time you can take a class or watch a demonstration or a performance, it just makes history alive, and you can understand it more. And I think Scotland, England, and Wales and Ireland do a really good job of showing living history. I mean, they're really protective over their history. It's like when you go to Texas, they have a monument for everything. They have a historical marker every mile, literally. So I think that's really cool. So I'm excited about you both coming home from Turkey and giving us, an update on Turkey. I know it's Turkey, or
Yeah, that's not curious what they're going to what they say because it's definitely pronounced differently. And I might prefer to do that because when you say turkey, people, it's like, huh? And, it's like, no, I'm not talking about food. I'm talking about I'm going to go to a
and maybe
turkey.
they wanted that. I mean, I'm excited because in the military history there, like that's some deep stuff, man.
Yeah, we're there for 2.5 weeks, so we really hope to, and almost actually closer to 3. But we're definitely excited to learn because that's just a culture that looks fascinating. The people look fascinating, and everyone we know who's gone just can't say enough about it. And we're not only just staying in Istanbul, we're definitely doing a tours through some of the old, very very old smaller towns and cities. So we're super excited. It's like, and I fly out for my pre-trip with my husband before that, but then the 3 of us will meet up in Istanbul. So yeah,
Not
it's going
Constantinople.
to be quite an event.
I was gonna do
Sorry.
that, but you took it from.
I had to. It's gonna happen.
Play the song.
I know. Like play it now, right? And no, you're gonna hear it when you go off the airport, like from the airplane. You're gonna hear it in your head. It's gonna drive you nuts. But no, I think this is exciting with you guys doing this. In closing on Scotland and Edinburgh, and again, everyone, the link is in the episode notes. Go check it out. It's like a full guide. And, I wanted to dig into a lot of the characters. I mean, you got poets, you got all kinds of people. There's so much history and stories connected. So it's really great. If you go on the article, it's a whole guide. Before you go to Scotland, I really encourage you to check that out. But before we go, I wanted to ask each of you one highlight of, Edinburgh Castle and its surroundings that we haven't touched on that you think people should experience. So I know you were talking about gardens, Joelle, but anything from Edinburgh that we haven't touched on that people should, high tea that you didn't get to have yet, but you will next time.
Yeah, I think the one that I think there's a lot of things, and I think Ryan can speak. And we love Victoria Street because that's just something. The colorful buildings, walking down that street also feels like you're stepping back in time, and it is a different feel, I think, than the rest of Edinburgh. I think the magic there is just wander. Just wander, go down alleys. There's so many flowers. There's so much color. But I think Ryan could speak to one of the funnest things that we felt. I mean, there's multiple different things to do. We loved going to Dean Village and so forth. But what we just loved was going into the pubs. And Ryan, you can speak to that. He loved, especially the old ones. Yeah, Ryan, what were your favorites? I mean, we definitely hit several of them.
Well, I was just thinking that like what was the one we went last time? It was right on the. I mean, there's the street that goes down to the backside of the castle, and there's just bar after bar, pub after pub, and you don't even have to just point and randomly walk in the one, which is kind of what we did. We're like, that one, and we walked in, and I mean, it was just beautiful and just everything you would expect from Edinburgh and a pub and yeah, that's one of the things I would recommend. It's just you don't even have to really review things. I mean, just go in somewhere and just randomly wander, and you're going to find something pretty cool. And like she said, the Dean Village, this beautiful little thing, just a couple minutes walk from the castle. And then you got all the different whiskey experiences you could do around.
Oh, here we go. Big full circle.
The garden, all the different gardens and the churches are
the churches. Oh my
amazing.
God. Yes.
And a lot of just I mean it's one of those walking cities. Besides the castle, it's relatively a pretty flat and easy to walk city. With a lot of stuff condensed right around that castle. So that's one of the big things. And then the surrounding area, you have Stirling, that inlet, and going out west. Just a few minute drive, you have Blackness Castle and plenty other castles going around that entire little inlet. And to include, once you get there, is Stirling Castle, which is obviously a huge, famous, and important castle, and the William Wallace Monument, which is pretty close to that as well. But I mean, just that whole area around. I mean, it's pretty amazing, and it's one of our favorite cities.
William Wallace. Oh my gosh, that's such a and I'm thinking I went to Blackness Castle. It just really rings a bell. It really does.
It's a fascinating castle.
Wow.
And there's just, our suggestion, the first time we went, we only stayed a couple of nights, and it was interesting. The first time we went, I think we did enjoy Edinburgh, but I don't think it was till the second time that we fell in love with Edinburgh and just was walking around with our mouths open, still saying, how did we miss this? How did we miss that? Because we had a shorter time the first time. And so we were sort of very focused on the castle in a certain area. But this city is magical everywhere. So give yourself at least 3 nights. There's so much there, and there's so much in the region there. But the city itself, because there's little surprises like this Dean Village, it's like you don't even know you're in the city. It's quiet. It's got a river or creek running through it. You feel like you've escaped and you've only walked like 5 minutes. So there's something about this city that just captures, and there's a community. There is no doubt there's a community there. People live there. This is a thriving center. When you go to these pubs and bars, especially if you go to ones that tend to attract locals, there's no doubt you are definitely not, you're with this community because there's not that many Americans or people not speaking with a Scottish accent, which of course is one of the best accents in the world.
It is.
And oh my
I
gosh,
love it.
I can never get tired. And it's hard to understand the really strong brogue on some people, but at the same time, I could listen to them. And they're so kind. They always were so welcoming. I thought no matter what pub we went, what food, if we had questions like, what should we get? They were always so genuine and kind. I mean, there's everything to love about this city and culture that it brings and the history it brings. And it is, as Ryan said, one of our favorite places.
I love Scottish people. They're just this passionate, but don't make them mad. Don't make them mad.
Nope. They're strong.
Don't make them mad, but they're passionate. The music, oh my gosh, the music too. It's a great band, the Wicked Tinkers. We've listened to and had on the show over the years. And I remember doing our very first Scottish Highland Games podcast. And we had a sheep herding lady with her dogs, right? And so she trains the dogs to herd the sheep. And when she called in, it's a live podcast, and she had it for some reason ended up in the field of sheep, and the podcast started with all these sheep going off, and we couldn't even introduce the show. Nancy and I were under the table with the complete giggles because all you could hear was sheep going bah, bah, and we still have that podcast out there somewhere. It was hysterical, but there's so much. I mean, they are just incredibly smart, and the entrepreneurship that comes from Scotland and that come here. I mean, you think about all the clans, and I learned so much about the clans. Like the Campbell soup is Scottish, all of that. Like when you start looking at the history of the clans and the clan names, you're going to find out so many companies from these industrious entrepreneurial people that are just fueled by passion and a lot of generosity and kindness, as we were saying. It's just really, really fascinating. So I'm so glad we talked about Scotland, and now I'm kind of feeling like I need to take a trip. No, I'm like, let's go. Everyone, again, the link for the whole guide that Ryan and Joelle have put together is up in the episode notes. Thank you all for listening. Next month, we're going to catch up with them and hear what happened in Turkey, Turkaya. I'm not saying it correctly, so I'm sorry to everyone in Turkey, but I'm sure we'll figure it out and hear more when they get back. And cannot wait to hear what you get up to. So thank you both so much, and safe travels.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us here on Big Blend Radio's Wanderer's Compass Travel Podcast. New episodes air every second Monday at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. You can follow the show at bigblendradio.com and keep up with Joelle and Ryan's adventures at wandererscompass.com.